Welcome to the Susan Brender Show. It's all about you. Featuring shows on health and wellness, the performing arts, politics, and people who inspire you to be your very best. And now, here's Susan Brender.
I'm Susan Brender, and this is Susan Brender Show. You know, very often you have guests on your show who you find extremely interesting. And the reason for that is that they're born educators and they provide information to so many people about so many different things. Well, my guest today, Peter Pactor, he was born and raised in Indiana. After receiving an A.B. from Wabash College and an M.A. from Washington University, he has been a teacher and an administrator in junior high schools and senior high schools. Now, he's retired right now, but boy, does he sees to teaching, but he decided to become an author. So he's like in the second part of his life. And I want to thank him for being on my show because he's going to tell us so much about why he wrote this book, why it's important for you to read the book, and many other things. So welcome, Peter Pactor, to the Susan Brender Show.
It's nice to be back, Susan.
You know, Peter, I know that people like to write books, but you've written Daniel, The Age of Discovery, and it's a big book. Now, what motivated you to do that?
Well, even though I retired, there are still things that I wanted to continue teaching. And I thought that writing a book and putting those things in would be a better way than an expository lecture.
Yeah. Now, when you say say that again, because I'm having trouble even saying
expository.
Expository lecture. Now, what do you define as an exploratory lecture?
If I were just to say you need to do this and do that and just talk about them, I don't think it's as interesting as getting a story. I think the best teachers were the best storytellers.
Really?
Yes, well,
what do you attribute to that? I mean, teachers, of course, they learn and they learn to write, they learn to read, they research, they do a lot of things to get their degrees. But why teachers? I mean, everybody can do that, no?
Well, I think it's possible if they want to do it. I think that may be the key. But if you just look, Jesus taught by telling stories, and Aesop taught by telling stories. You can go line after line. There are a lot of people. Bert Brecht, who's a German playwright, was very didactic in his writing. He had things he wanted to teach, and he sometimes seems to hit you over the head with it. Mm-hmm. But I think he is a great author. He's one of my favorites.
Right. Okay, so tell me why he's your favorite, because there are so many people and there's so many books that offer information and education. So why that particular book?
I wouldn't say he's my favorite, but he's one I have enjoyed. I read all his books in German because he's a German author. He wrote, I think, the Three Penny Opera, maybe the most famous in America because of his song Mac the Knife, which came from that play. But in Mother Courage, which is maybe his greatest play, he says, or maybe The Life of Galileo, there's two things. In Mother Courage, it's about you have to take a stand. You can't walk down the middle of the road. And there's a war going on, and Mother Courage tries to stay out of the war, and she's neither side. It wouldn't take either side, and she ends up being run over by the traffic in the highway, so to speak. And Life of Galileo, that is absolutely my favorite play by Brecht. It's about Galileo's life, and in that play, Galileo has a young boy as his assistant, and of course, when he presents a heliocentric theory of the universe, and it really upsets man's relationship in the universe. It was against all the authorities to say that, and Andreas, his helper, this boy says to Galileo, in your universe, where is God?
Let me interrupt you because now that question, where is God? There are a lot of people who don't believe in God. Now, because of that, are they losing out? Do you believe that there's a God? And if so, what do you think that he teaches us?
Oh, I think he teaches a lot. But let me finish the story about Galileo first before I answer. Galileo answers Andreas and says, he's in us or nowhere. And maybe that's right. Maybe when you flip somebody off on the highway who's cut you off, then perhaps you're also flipping off God. When you get mad at somebody and you yell at them and being aggressive, and we've had a lot of that lately since the end of the election, maybe that is also being offensive to God, to treat your fellow man inhumanely or disrespectfully.
Yeah. Now I want to just bring up another thing, and then you'll answer my other question, and that is that we have a new president who doesn't care what he says. He says all kinds of weird things on Twitter, and a lot of people think that he's pretty rude. What do you say about that?
Well, I don't want to be political here. I have my opinions, but I don't want to discuss personalities because I'm not sure that it's right, and I could say something that would be offensive to him, and I don't want to offend him any more than I would probably want to offend any other public.
So I asked you before, I said, what is God? And if people don't believe in God, then is it a problem? Is it a travesty? What would you say?
Well, Susan, this is not a direction I thought we'd go in this, but I'm going to follow it up. I believe in God, and I think the reason people have a hard time with that is because they confuse God with religion. And I don't think that religion necessarily represents God. It's more of being in a sect. For example, if people really believed the things that, for example, that Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, then they wouldn't have any trouble. And most I'll say Christian religions expound those beliefs, but they get lost in the question of how you worship rather than how you live.
Yeah.
And I think religion is about how one lives. So if you want to represent your religion, then you should live in such a way that does that.
Yeah.
There's a great play by Lessing, a German playwright born in 1729, and he is called Nathan the Wise, and it was the first play, I think, where a Jew was the hero of the play.
Right.
And he's supposed to be wise, and he tells this parable in the story, because at that time people were discussing which is a true religion, Islam, Christianity, or Judaism. And he's called forth, and he tells this parable. He says, there was once a man who had a ring that was guaranteed to make him the most beloved person in the world.
Yeah.
And each father passed it down to his oldest son, the son he loved most.
Wow.
And it went down from generation to generation to generation until there was a father who had 3 sons.
Right.
And he loved them equally well, and he wanted each one, and in a moment of weakness, he promised each one the ring after he died. So he didn't know what to do, and he went out to a jeweler and had 2 exact copies made, so that you couldn't tell the real one from the other. And so the man, on his deathbed, called each son individually in and gave him a ring.
Right.
And after he died, they all discovered that they had the identical ring. And they started squabbling about which one was a genuine ring. And so they went to Nathan, and Nathan said, what is the power of the ring? The power of the ring is to make you loved by everybody. And he said, so which one of you is loved the most?
Yeah.
And then they had no answer because they'd been squabbling over which one had the real ring.
Amazing story. Yeah, that's a really great story. Now, let's kind of shift gears for the moment, and let's talk a little bit about your new book. Okay, first of all, I would like you to tell the people what it's called, and I'd like to know why you wrote it.
Okay, that's a good question. The book is called Thoughts to Hold On To. It's not out yet. It's in production at the publishers right now, and it's Thoughts to Hold On To just for teenagers. Now, I wrote the first copy of this 25 years ago, and I decided to do an expanded edition. I had more things to say. It's a small book. The first book was only 42 pages. The expanded edition, probably about 82, 84 pages. Mm-hmm. And on each page, there is one topic that concerns teenagers, for example. Mm-hmm. Talk about heroes and honesty and anger, ignorance, when your world's out of whack, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And there's only about 250 words per page.
Right.
So, and at the bottom of the page, at the bottom of the page in bold type, there is a statement there that maybe help them to remember. For example, I just opened my old book to Dealing with Negatives. At the bottom of the page, it says, "You wouldn't let anyone dump garbage in your room. Don't let anyone dump garbage in your mind."
Right. Oh, that's an interesting statement.
And so it's that advice. As I started writing this 25 years ago, as I said, because there were students in my school that I knew were having problems. I didn't know what the problems were.
Right.
And so I started to write this, and I asked some students to read for me as I wrote these things, and they had suggestions. One time I was on the chapter on procrastination, and one student, a very good, very, very good student, and all around good kid, said, "I'm going to stop procrastinating today."
Did
I said, "Okay, I'm going to stop tomorrow." and he said, and in our conversation, he said, "You should write a book on stress, a chapter on stress." So I did.
The kid said that?
Yeah, the kid said that to me. And so I saw him about 2 or 3 weeks later, and I said, "Well, how's the procrastination coming along?" He said, "Oh, it's great. I'm ahead a week in all my classes."
Oh, wow. You had an impact on him. Now, Peter, let me interrupt you one more time.
Let me just finish this. And I said to him, "How's the stress coming along?" And he said, "Fine, I don't have any."
Wow.
And that's because he was ahead in all his subjects.
So, of all the different words that you used, you said the kids have, they have depression, they have anxiety, they have all these different things going on in their head and in their body and various things going on that are pretty negative. Now, which one of them stands out for you? Is it anger? Is anger one of the most horrendous things that the kids are dealing with?
No, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think that today the kids are not grounded whatsoever, and everything that happens to them is a crisis. Now, when I went to school, and probably when you went to school, everything that our parents told us was right and wrong. You got the same feedback in your house of worship. You got the same feedback in school. You saw the same thing in the movies. You saw the same thing, you had the same thing in your music. And now, with the access to the world through the internet and their cell phones, they don't have any foundation to make good decisions.
Yeah.
And I in our conversation on the phone a few weeks ago, I talked about cheating, and we never thought it was okay to cheat. I mean, maybe people did, but in my class, every kid I said to them, "How many of you seen people cheating?" And every one of them raised their hand. These were mostly seniors. And I said, what have you done about it? And except for one girl, the kid said, nothing, I don't want to be a snitch. Nothing, I don't want to be a snitch. Nothing, I don't want to be a snitch. And we went on, and finally, I was, by the time the conversation was over, I was rather annoyed because I'd seen two people cheating, and another student had told me about it.
Sure. And
I took a week off from pursuing my curriculum to talk about cheating, and they'd never thought about it before. The movie I showed them was The Emperor's Club with Kevin Kline and Emil Hirsch. And it's a great movie, and it's all about cheating. And when we finished the movie, the kids' attitudes had changed because no one explained to them ever that cheating hurts other people. I had real-life examples, and the cheating hurts the cheater. And they have an obligation. And this is part of it. You asked me about religion, but part of it is taking care of one another.
Right.
And if you let people, and this is in my chapter on friends. Friends don't let friends do things that are harmful to themselves or harmful to others.
Yes.
And when you let someone cheat, even though you don't want to be a snitch, you're not helping them. In the past, I had students who might see someone cheating, and they would talk to them after class and say, look, we saw you doing this, and if you do it again, we're going to turn you in. And they told me they spoke to them, and I didn't respond. I didn't do anything, and when they saw them cheating in class, they gave me a high sign, and I took them down to the dean's office.
Now, that's very interesting because today I think that, I don't want to say that a lot of people are cheating. I have no idea. I'm not a teacher. But nevertheless, I think that there are so many broken homes and so many problems in our society that kids in the inner city schools, they don't have anybody to emulate. And so, cheating is just one small thing that they do. I mean, there's so many other things. We're talking about drugs, and we're talking about alcohol. We're talking about having children when they're teenagers. I mean, it seems to me that cheating is just a small thing. Am I wrong?
No, I mean, it's all part of it. It's going back to what I said before, that these people, many people in this country, have nothing to hold on to. They are not grounded. It's not universally true. We have people who are grounded and can make good decisions, young people even. But we have not just young people, but adults who do the same thing.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk about, because our politicians, now you want to talk about cheating. You want to talk about mistrust. When it comes to politics, it's like an open society. I believe that cheating is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many other things going on.
And this goes back to your question about faith, is that is how you treat one another, and it's not just business. So this. Politics, it's business, and everything we do in our society, at least it appears that way to me, that people worship money and worship the things they can buy, because in our society, we teach people through our advertising and our movies that if you say, for example, if you drink this liquor, it's going to make you happy.
Yeah.
Or if you buy this car, it's going to make you happy. But they're not going to make you happy. They might give you momentary pleasure to use alcohol or drugs or indiscriminate sex or buy signs of wealth. They'll give you momentary pleasure, but they won't give you happiness. There are only two things in this world that will make you happy.
That's right.
And those are, one is working hard for a goal. If you really have a goal and you work hard for it, the process will make you happy. Maybe getting the goal, achieving the goal, will give you pleasure, but again, it may not do that.
Mm-hmm.
You may get there and say, well, this is not what I want.
Right.
But the process will make you happy. Also, the other thing that will make you happy is doing things for other people.
Yeah.
Now, those are the only two things I know that could make you happy. And if you want to be unhappy, and the cause for most unhappiness is you're thinking about yourself too much. Don't sit in your room and have a pity party. When you feel sorry for yourself, go out and do something for someone else.
Sure.
And those are the things I know about happiness.
That's a very interesting thing. Now, let's talk about happiness because, sometimes we get so caught up in talking about all the bad things that are going on in our world. And so, as far as you're concerned, what is define happiness for me first, and then let me know how you kind of make it happen for people to be happy. Because, oh boy, especially after this election, even kids, I don't know how they feel about it, but our world is in an uproar. It's all. Well, yeah, go ahead.
I think you keep coming back to the election. I just think we just going to have to wait and see.
I see.
And Harry Truman once said that no one goes into the presidency to do harm to the country.
Yeah, I understand that. But again,
I mean, some do. I mean, you could hire. You keep coming back to this. I'm going to say this. James Buchanan was probably the most experienced person in the country to be president. He had done tremendous things. Most people don't know anything about Buchanan except that he was the president before Lincoln, and he let the South secede. He did not take steps. He could have taken steps to slow it or to prevent it, but he didn't. He chose not to because he had this. Even though he's from Pennsylvania, he had this infatuation with the lifestyle of the South, especially the Southern planters.
Yeah.
And so, in spite of the fact of all his great background, and he really did have an awesome background, that he wasn't a very good president. Mm-hmm. And some of the presidents, the great presidents, Lincoln's by far my favorite. Mm-hmm. But I'm really fond of Harry Truman. I wasn't when I was a kid, but right. Having studied his life and learned about him, that he was right most of the times, and he was a great president because he did the things that he thought were right, even though it made him exceedingly unpopular.
Right.
I mean, when he fired MacArthur, oh my gosh, people were in an uproar. I remember this. I'm old enough to remember it.
Wow.
and I remember the uproar. And there was on the Lucky Strike cigarette pack, at the bottom it said LSMFT. Lucky Strike means fine tobacco, but as kids we used to go around. It said LSMFT meant Lord Save Me from Truman. Mm. He was really unpopular, but he had incredibly strong character. And this gets back to where we were talking about before. Yeah. And I'll say this: that character is a hallmark of an educated person. Mm. And if there are people here in our country who have diplomas and have college degrees, but they're not educated, they lack the character to behave properly.
So you answered the question that I was going to ask, which is, are our young people getting an education? You answered it. We don't have to continue that. But why are young people, having graduated from college, finding it difficult to find jobs? I mean, now we're talking about something that's going on today. Today, it seems to be so difficult for kids to find jobs. And I think that if we have a president, and I'm sorry I have to talk about politics now, if the president is the person who's going to understand that without a good education, you don't go anywhere. So what do you say about that?
Well, I don't think the president can change that myself, but maybe I'm wrong. It would be nice to be wrong about that. But as far as education goes, they don't want an education. The vast majority of people that I come in contact with just want grades.
Right.
And they don't care how they get them. So, for example, a kid came by, I've known for several years, and he got in some trouble, and he asked me to help straighten out his wife. And I said, well, I'll be glad to help you. And he was reading the back of my book. And he said, what does this word mean? And what does that word mean? And I said, you just graduated from high school. Why don't you know that? Mm-hmm. He said, because I cheated through high school. I said, it looks to me like you cheated yourself. You're the guy who wants to be a writer and a songwriter, and now you don't have the vocabulary.
Wow.
And that's typical. A lot of times the kids just learn the material for the quiz and forget it, and which is a good argument for cumulative exams at the end of the semester. And they cheat.
They cheat.
And I was amazed. I'd never had a cheating problem like I had last year in 50 years of teaching.
Wow.
And I wouldn't even teach the same way anymore, because if I give them homework, they can go online and get all the answers off homework.
Yeah.
And they'll be satisfied to hand it in with correct answers and not even learn anything by doing it.
Yeah. Well, my guest today has been Peter Pactor, who's an educator and a person who's got a good moral strength and ethic, and he knows how to be a good teacher, and he knows what kids should do to become good students. So I want to say, Peter, if people want to buy your book, if they want to know a little more about your philosophy, what do they do?
Okay, there's a couple things. My book is sold online at all the online bookstores. Like I said, Thoughts to Hold On To isn't out yet. They can order the book through Amazon, for example, or my publisher, Friesen Press. Also, if they wanted to find out more, they can go to my website, peterpactor.net. And, there's a place to contact me on there, so if they do that, I'll do my best to answer. I also have a author site on Goodreads, and there's one on Amazon, but I rarely go to the one on Amazon.
Well, my guest today, again, has been Peter Pactor, an educator, a person with a lot of morals and ethics, and somebody who, if you want to learn or have your children learn a lot, he's the man to go at. So thank you so much, Peter Pactor, for being on the Susan Brender Show.
It's my pleasure, Susan. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Susan Brender Show. To be a guest, email sebrender@yahoo.com.